there. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and journalists, all different people who are putting stuff out in the Bronx. And under that definition, it also includes people like artists or authors. And this evening, in our second segment, we have one of the Bronx's premier artists who's going to come on the show and talk about his latest gallery exhibition that is available to you. But right now, to start the program, we're going to talk to a reporter for Politics New York. He covers city and state government. It's my pleasure to welcome Ethan Stark Miller to the program. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Gary. Thanks so much for having me.
As I mentioned to you, I've been reading what you've been writing for a while, and you really are, in my mind, a wonderful, thorough reporter, kind of person we need covering issues in the Bronx and beyond. Little background for you so people get to meet who you are. What got you into journalism? When did you get started? What was your interest? Let's get a little background.
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't the most. It wasn't like a working at a school paper kind of path. Like I came to it in kind of a roundabout way. I've always been kind of into storytelling. Was very into it in high school. I kind of did like these film programs. Made my own movies, and then also was very into politics. So I kind of saw like the marriage between those two things as journalism, and during college got into that.
And where did you go to school?
I went to a
We
school
all want to know. What school?
it's the $1,000,000 question. I went to a school called Wheaton College,
Wheaton.
very small school in Massachusetts, not too far from Providence, Rhode
Is
Island.
that where you grew up in Massachusetts?
No, I grew up here in the city. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Ah, there you go. Well, you're forgiven for crossing borough lines. That's okay. Um, so it kind of like was one of these things that you gravitated to it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what inspires you to do the work now, especially covering politics as you do for Politics New York, which is part of the Schnepp's family of papers.
Yes, yeah, it's part of the um, and yeah, I mean, politics. I think what on the baseline inspired me is just this is all politics is everything. It's like the issues that affect everyone every day. Whether that's politics or policy, I guess, is up for debate. But the people who we're putting in power, that's very important. And something that everyone needs to know about. And I think it was like during the 2008 election when I first kind of became interested in politics. And actually, it was my parents watching like a lot of MSNBC that like got me into it. Which now I wouldn't exactly say that's what I watch these days, but like that was kind of the inciting moment.
And listen, I can relate to what you're saying about wanting. I mean, I would say I'm the medium through which all that information flows, and of course, you using a slightly different medium, using print. Let's talk about some stuff that you've been writing about. And one of them is redistricting, which, frankly, for the everyday New Yorker, gets very complicated. There's congressional lines, there's state lines, which breaks down to the Senate and the Assembly, and now, of course, the city council redistricting is happening right in front of our eyes. Let's talk about the congressional lines. I'll just give you a little background, which I'm sure you know. Richie Torres is going to be covering Riverdale, which is a bit of a stretch. Jamal Bowman, assuming that these guys win, will not be covering that large swath of the West Bronx anymore, and just only has a little bit of the Bronx. AOC's district is going to cover more of the East Bronx, which may not please so many of the moderate Democrats and Republicans who live in that part of the Bronx. You've been writing about Manhattan with Nadler and Maloney in the 10th congressional district with de Blasio. This is where I'm going. Do you think this was done properly, and that now, even though there are some things going on, we're at a good place right now?
Well, the first iteration of maps, which were drawn by the supermajority Democrat state legislature, those were found by the state's highest court to be the New York State Court of Appeals to be gerrymandered, basically, beyond recognition to
Favor Democrats, yeah.
yeah, to advantage Democrats. There's a district in the south part of the city, southern Brooklyn, Staten Island, that they drew to include more liberal neighborhoods in Brooklyn to get Nicole Malliotakis,
Right.
well, presumably to get Nicole Malliotakis,
Yes.
the conservative congresswoman there, out of office. Um, so, I mean, it seems like what they ultimately ended up with, these new maps, which were drawn by an independent expert appointed by an upstate judge, it seems like these are more fair. They even the odds for Republicans in some places. Malliotakis now has a good chance of recapturing her seat. And it's created these kind of competitive dynamics between some longstanding Democrats. You have, like you said, Nadler and Maloney.
A fascinating, competition there.
Yeah, those two have been in
Yeah,
Congress for decades.
you know what strikes me, which really is kind of interesting, is there are states all over this country that do this from the other side on a routine basis to X out people from voting or, kind of creating Republican districts. And those court systems don't intercede and they get away with it. In New York, fairly or unfairly, here it gets gerrymandered. And of course, we'd like to think maybe there's a greater sense of justice. How do you see the state lines now? The Senate lines, and I bring up the congressional and the state Senate because that's what's coming up in the August primary. The Gustavo Rivera Miguelina Camilo race in the 33rd is fascinating, as is the one in the 34th with Christian Amato, Natalia Fernandez, and James Gisandi. Um, how do you see it? I'll just throw it open. Do you want to weigh in? How do you see any of those playing out?
Yeah, I mean, the Rivera race is really interesting because, he's an incumbent. He's been in the Senate for 10 years. He originally came into the Senate with the party's blessing and their backing and has held on to it for a long time. But, according to reporting from the Bronx Times, and kind of obviously publicly, he was backing Jessica Wolford, who was running against Assembly Member Jeffrey Dinowitz in the Riverdale district. And then also you had Jonathan Soto. He was backing him, who was running against Michael
Michael
Benedetto.
Benedetto. You know what's interesting about all that is that, here's, somebody, as you said, who is in essence a party regular, and now there's a less familiar name, Miguelina Camilo, that's being backed, by the, Benjamin Franklin Club, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see that, and yet he's a well-heeled, so to speak, incumbent. Do you see her being able to defeat him even with the new resources that she has? Maybe she can.
Yeah, maybe she can. I mean, name recognition always that's a pretty powerful thing. And
Even though the district extends to new neighborhoods.
right. That's true. Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of dynamics at work there. And that, yeah, maybe the district extending the new neighborhoods gives her a good shot. And
Mhm,
the party has a lot of resources, like you said. And
mhm.
political clubs like the Ben Franklin Club also have a lot of resources. The Dinowitzes are closely tied to both of those, and they have a lot of sway in the Riverdale area. They have a lot of name recognition. So that could tilt things in her favor.
It's a fascinating, if you're interested in the horse race, so to speak, it's, rather fascinating. What it also sets up, and you've written about this, is the whole idea of, the progressive movement, which did not do well in, the assembly, primary. Um, how do you see it? This is what strikes me, and you've covered in Riverdale plenty, is that, Jeff Dinowitz is 100% on women's rights and 100% on guns, gun control, et cetera, et cetera. He wrote the eviction moratorium law. But right now, progressives don't see him as a progressive, and there's a whole and he frankly is fighting back in name, frankly. How do you see the progressive movement? Was that a bellwether of what's to come? What happened with the assembly, or do you think maybe there's still some life there and they'll be able to defeat incumbents?
Well, if you listen to the New York Working Families Party, who I spoke to for a
Yes,
story that I did on this,
right.
they'll say turnout was low in that election, and it's not a bellwether. This is not the last gasp of the movement that started with AOC back in 2018. It was just
Mhm.
like a hiccup. And I was told the August election could have higher turnout, although I don't see how that could happen during a second election in the same year, and there's no statewide races, and people will be on vacation.
It
Um,
it's it you know, t in my mind, that's a mess. It's discouraging for voters rather than encouraging for voters.
yeah,
And that will also, kind of determine how the whole thing plays. Um, just, the last thing, we didn't really get a chance to touch on it, and frankly, I haven't had a chance to analyze it. We'll be doing a show on Bronx Talk, about the city council, redistricting. The first draft is out. What are your thoughts? What are the is there anything, eye-opening there that makes you say, "Gee, this is gonna be an interesting competition."
the main thing that jumped out to me, and other people in like the political class, I guess, is there was this district down in Brooklyn that was created to be a majority Asian district. But it's put a couple of council members into the same district, and they're possibly going to have to compete with each other if these are the maps that are
That
adopted.
ultimately get through.
Yeah, and
So
that's
that
Justin Brannan, the finance chair, and Alexa Aviles, who's like she's a first term younger progressive.
right. Did you see anything in the Bronx that of interest? As I said, I have not had a chance to see them, but, anything in the Bronx that raises your eyes, or is it mostly gonna be essentially the same
It
as what
mostly
we
looked
saw
the
there?
same to me.
Okay.
I didn't see
I
too
we
many.
accept that.
Yeah, maybe that's a good thing. I don't. Yeah, it depends who you ask.
I will, we'll both not weigh in on that concept right now. Anyway, Ethan Stark Miller, he covers city and state government for Politics New York. Nice to have you with us for the first time. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to invite you to make a second and third time as well.
All right, thank you so much, Gary. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me on.
Folks, we'll take a short break. When we come back, as I mentioned, the aforementioned great Bronx artist, Daniel Hauben, will join us and show us some of his great artwork. And we'll do that right after we take a break. Don't go away. All right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. It is always a joy and a pleasure to bring in a friend, but also one of the Bronx's foremost artists and painters. It is my good friend Danny Hauben. Nice to have you with us, Danny.
Oh, thanks for having me back. Pleasure to be here.
And he is, as you can see in the background there, he's calling right from his studio in the North Bronx. Hard at work on this, that, or the other. But the big thing coming up, or it's actually already up, is The Other Side of Summer, which is a gallery exhibit by 6 artists. One of them is you at
hmm
the Riverdale Y, the gallery at the Y. So let's talk now. The opening reception is already over. But let's
Yes.
talk about the exhibit in general, and then we'll talk about your great work.
So George Gutierrez is the new curator, and he's an old friend of mine. He's the new curator of Gallery 18 at the Y. And he has brought together 6 artists who all do, representational work. One is a photographer. One is a sculptor who actually is less representational, but it's all, under the guise of that theme of summer. And, in my case, it's summer represented by scenes of New York, of the Bronx, mostly. And George is a photographer and a visual artist, and is looking to kind of elevate the scene there at the gallery. And I think he's done a wonderful job putting this work together. I recommend people come see it. It's open, regular Y hours, so
Right.
it'll be lots
And
of
they,
opportunity for people to see
it's
the
over
work.
there at on 5625 Arlington Avenue.
Yeah.
Danny, is there a theme for you? Summertime was really the theme. I mean, you have so much.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my work was created during the months when it's most conducive to work
Which would
outside.
be the
So,
summer, yeah.
which would be the summer. I have spent many a summer, traversing the Bronx and finding wonderful locations to work in. So this piece, this was done. In the lead up to my Bronx Community College Commission.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was exploring the neighborhood around there,
So wait,
including
that is Burnside
that's
Avenue.
Burnside. Yeah, so
Right.
if you follow Burnside up the hill to University, you'll hit the college pretty close by. So that's how I discovered that location.
You have done so many, Bronx scenes like this. Was there anything in particular about this that was striking or
Well,
interesting,
yeah,
or it's
it
more
had
of the same?
no. Well, there's no such thing as more of the same, as you know. The
Sorry,
Bronx is
sorry.
endlessly fascinating, and there's always new, possibilities to explore and discover. And in this case, this scene had all of the ingredients in terms of, the like, park life in the Bronx is essential to people, many people's lives, and this has got it going on, with the dappled shade coming down and the people playing chess or checkers, but then, so I started on the right-hand side, which was the street scene part, and then I realized the park itself needed to be included, and this often happens with my work, that I
Mhm.
wind up coming back with a second panel.
Do you? I'm just
Doing
curious
larger
about that. Do you when you do that, when you do those sectional things, do you do them in your studio, like you take a mental picture or maybe take a photograph, or each time do you go back out there to look at it live?
No, I'm working. That piece is just about entirely created on
Wow,
location. So, in order to do a piece that's
amazing!
that's 5 feet wide, or I don't forget the size, but so that required actually. I think I brought 2 easels out there. I had it
Wow.
all connected up. I become like part of the phenomenon, part of the scene, as soon as I
Which
show up,
right,
which
which probably goes
always
back to
fun.
that book photography and artist thing of taking pictures of the artists doing the
artists
work out
on
there.
location, and
That's-
unfortunately, most artists don't get the exposure that I've gotten, exposing myself, so to speak,
Yeah.
to the public by being right out there in the scene. I haven't done it in a while, but when we talk about it, it gets me thinking about that. That's just been one of my favorite experiences ever, is painting out on location, meeting people, connecting, feeling, breathing having the work, the life around me come through the art.
I was going to say, there's no question that it infiltrates and it becomes part of the work.
Yeah.
All right, let's take another look. Anderson has a bunch of your now these are all ones that are
So
on
these
display.
what's on display are these. These are reproductions, are the museum quality Giclée reproductions. I'm happy to report that last one, the 2-panel piece, was sold at the opening, so that was cool.
Oh, that's nice.
So people should clamber to get over there to see what else is still available.
Now,
But
and that one that we just looked at was Manhattan.
that was the one Manhattan piece, but since it's a real summer kind of a feel, being down in Columbus Circle, and
Right.
I like scenes that have all like kind of the what's in your face in the foreground, and then looking down the canyon of the road, the street, and having that, getting the atmosphere, both the close up and the bigger picture of the urban life.
I'm going to
that's
assert,
exciting.
having looked at your artwork and enjoyed your artwork for years, that there's always more to see. As you say, there's something that's in your face, but then ultimately it is, and that of course characterizes our very populous borough of the Bronx. All right, what do we got next?
Indeed.
There's one that I'm waiting for. This is the one.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I
So
love
this is up on Bailey Avenue, looking north along the. This is called Harlem River Bend, and that's a great view. I just love that whole area, looking both that way and then looking south, from the Target parking lot down the Harlem River towards Manhattan. Amazing views that, what I just felt, it was so unfortunate they put up Target there with no windows, but at least they got the parking lot where they have never.
Well, you could, that's right. You can
you could
overlook.
paint from. We could look at the scene, and we need. Yeah, go ahead.
What I like about that, and it really reflects what we were just talking about a moment ago, is that, okay, so there's the river and the bridge, but then there's more to see, because if you look at what it looks like in real life, is the roadway down the hill. There's a little green patch over there. I mean, it's just, and I think we all have appreciated for many years that you've been able to capture that. Do you remember? I got to do a little trivia before we go into the next one.
Okay.
Do you recall that years ago, I probably should pull up the picture somewhere, we used one of your paintings as the backdrop for Bronx Talk?
Absolutely.
Years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought of it as we knew
doubt.
you were coming up.
Yeah. So, the talk about the detail, that's, to me, that's what's interesting, is the specificity. And, people, especially, when you live in an environment that's so busy and so much, going on, like we are absorbing what our environment looks like, but we're not necessarily retaining that or processing or even aware of
or
it.
noticing it.
Noticing it,
Right.
So, I can't tell you how many times I was painting out on location and somebody told me, I pass this scene like every day, and somehow I never looked at it before. So I always, I appreciate that, I can play a little role there in saying, look, this is what it is, and there's beauty there as well.
I was going to say, and let's appreciate it.
That's what I've always, that's my inclination, is towards the beauty.
Well, or towards letting us understand underneath what you might be thinking about, there is
Yeah,
something worth
no,
representing.
absolutely.
I think we've got one more. And these are all part of what's on this. Oh,
Yeah,
this
these are also
boy,
there's a big
everybody in the Bronx loves this one. Go ahead.
there's a big reproduction of this one in the show, and this actually, what everything I paint becomes like this historical document because things change. So that scene of Gun Hill and White Plains Road, it doesn't look like that anymore because
Oh,
they
really?
built that like glassed-in station underneath there.
That's right. Well, that's an
but
ADA compliance thing. I'm guessing
whatever.
with an elevator and
What I
escalator.
don't. Yeah, exactly. Which is
Yeah.
all well and good, but but no longer has this. The thing that drew me to it, which was this kind of shadow and light play underneath. That was I found just compelling.
So it's the other side of summer at the Gallery 18 at the Riverdale Y, and that goes on until September 7th. So there's plenty of times to stop by and check it out. And listen, we singled out Danny because he was easy to get to. We know him, but let's recognize Jose Antonio Arvelo, Jerry Gallo, George Gutierrez, Robert Silverman, and Daniel Van Thuisen, I think is how it's pronounced, because they are the other artists who are being represented. Danny, what are you working on now, and what's next? We only got about 35 seconds.
Yeah, no, I've been doing one piece during all of COVID. Somehow it's made me more compulsive than ever. So stay tuned. It's maybe we can focus on that, and it really focused on my imagination more than anything else.
That may be scariest of all.
Watch out. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, Danny Hauben, DanielHauben.com is the website, and certainly check out his artwork. It is wonderful artwork, and it represents our borough. It gives us a chance to see us, even though they're common scenes, in ways maybe we never saw it before. And so, Danny, we certainly appreciate it. Do you have any other galleries or anything else set up that we should know about coming up, or not yet?
No, actually. So, all you gallerists out there, I'm up for grabs.
Pick up the phone. And there's, there's a tremendous archive of Daniel Hauben photos, paintings. And as he knows, I have 2 hanging in my bedroom. So it's essentially the first thing I see every morning is that scene from the number 4 train.
Cool.
So,
well,
anyway,
you so
Danny
much,
Hauben,
Gary.
thank you so much.
It's a great pleasure for me.
It's always great for me too. Folks, that will do it for our Bronx Buzz for this evening. Thanks to Ethan Stark Miller, who had never been on before, and he was our first guest this evening. And of course, to Danny Hauben for his great talent and great work. And please, I got it right here. Get up to the Gallery 18 at the Y on Arlington Avenue, and let's keep buzzing about the Bronx on the Bronx Buzz. So you know what happens. We'll see you next week. Good night.